In this video, I'll walk you through the installation of an Auxbeam 6-gang switch panel in my Land Rover Discovery 1. I recently added an e-locker and some big lights on my Discovery, and even with just 2 added circuits, the wiring and switches were getting out of hand. Lucky for me, Auxbeam makes a switch panel with internal solid-state relays and 6 fuse circuits. In full disclosure, they did send me this in exchange for a video, but no one is paying me or influencing my opinion at all. I just want you guys to stop having to add a relay for every set of lights you have, and I really hope this solution is as good as it looks. This is the Auxbeam AR600, which has 6 circuits, adjustable backlight color, and apparently Bluetooth connectivity that works with their app. I don't know how much I care about the Bluetooth part, but the infinitely adjustable color thing is kind of cool. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in the box. Stickers for the buttons on the panel, the relay box, some cables and mounting brackets, the switch panel itself, a 60 amp breaker, blade fuse taps, and some more bracketry. The first thing to do is set up the switch panel. I don't love how this bracket sticks out the sides, but I'm going to use it because of where I want to mount it. There's also a pivoting bracket if that works better for your installation. With that installed, I can show you where it's going in the Disco. I'm going to put the switch panel right here. I got this idea for placement from my internet Land Rover buddy Patrick. Plus, there's the big flat piece of plastic just kind of asking for it. I marked the holes with the panel centered, but then realized that if I move it slightly to the passenger side, I can pass the cable through the existing sunroof motor access hole. I know some people's eyes are twitching at the asymmetry, but I feel pretty good about it. Since I'll be using the new panel for the e-locker, I can remove that switch and all the associated wiring. Not being one to let a good grommet go to waste, I'm passing the cable for the switch panel through that same spot in the firewall. My favorite thing about this whole setup is that only one cable needs to pass through the firewall. Now I'm just running that cable up the A-pillar and along the front of the headliner to the panel. It turned out pretty clean, except for that mounting bracket and the silver screws. The cool thing about the exposed fasteners, though, is that if my sunroof gets stuck open, I can easily remove the switch panel to access the motor and close it manually. With the switch panel installed, now we have to work out where to put the relay box and the 60 amp breaker. This stuff will get wired directly to the battery, and all the accessories will then be wired to the box. With that in mind, I'm going to put it right where the OEM bottle jack lives. Don't worry, that jack is essentially useless now that the Disco is on 35s. With that stuff removed, there's plenty of room for the box and the breaker. I used the angled bracket, and even with sheet metal screws directly into the inner fender, it feels plenty solid. The provided 10mm or 8-gauge wire goes from the positive lug on the relay box to one of the posts on the breaker. Since the battery is on the opposite end of the engine bay, the wire that comes in the box is too short, and I had to run my own behind the radiator cowl. One end goes on the breaker and the other goes to a spare spot in the main fuse box. I'm running the ground from the relay box to the common ground location under the airbox, which I had to remove to gain access. Now when I reset the breaker, I have battery voltage at the relay box. Nice. The system isn't on all the time though, since that would drain the battery. This wire will give it 12 volts only when the ignition is on. The other end is in fuse number 6, the cigarette lighter circuit. I've always thought these piggyback fuse tap things were kinda weird, but it's hard to argue with how easy it was to tap into a switched power source. All we have to do now is connect the accessories. The e-locker is just a matter of plugging the positive and ground wires that come up from the differential into a spot on the relay box. The Terra Firma locker uses a low amperage electromagnet to actuate, so I'm using one of the 10 amp circuits. Connecting the lights is a bit more work, but only because I previously had them running with their own relay and switch. Now I get to remove all that garbage, adjust the wiring harness a bit, and run the 12 gauge positive and ground straight to the Auxbeam relay box. Since these lights came with a 25 amp fuse and 40 amp relay, I'm going to use one of the 30 amp circuits. Again, I can't stress how simple this is. The two lights are spliced into a single positive and ground, and those wires get plugged straight into the new circuit terminal. No relays, no inline fuses. The ports in each terminal are big enough to accept two 12 gauge wires, so as long as the draw isn't higher than 30 amps, you can use a single circuit to power multiple sets of lights. In that case, I'd probably want to use a ferrule connector to keep the wire ends tidy, but now we're getting into the weeds a bit, and the bottom line is that wiring stuff is now really simple. Success. If you listen carefully, you will not hear a relay clicking when these lights turn on. The very last thing to do is add the stickers to the switch panel buttons. I was initially thinking that these were going to look terrible, but the stickers themselves are made of some pretty thick plastic material, and they ended up looking great. Like I said, I only have the bumper lights and the e-locker, so I'm adding these blanks in the other places for now. Leaving them open would make the lighting way too bright. I'm also putting a rear light sticker on this button, which I'm hoping will motivate me to put lights on the rack or the rear bumper. So here it is all lit up in the car. Also, here's that app I mentioned earlier. From the app you can adjust color and brightness, but the panel doesn't seem to remember the brightness setting, which I think is a big oversight. Even with the auto dimming feature, it's just too bright most of the time. Luckily you can press the mode button, which kills all the backlighting. The app also lets you assign different settings to each button, and you can turn things on or off with your phone. Not sure I'll ever use this feature, but I guess it's pretty cool. So yeah, I'd rate this thing a solid 6.2 out of 7 stars, with the only demerit being the brightness. It's great to not have to run any relays or complicated harnesses for lights, which makes me want to add some more. Well worth $240 in my opinion.